She only needed $50, but that night, fate decided to answer with $50,000 instead. The crying started as a soft whimper, barely louder than the hum of the old refrigerator in the corner, but within seconds it sharpened, cutting through the cramped apartment like a siren that refused to be ignored. Clara Whitmore tightened her grip on the edge of the kitchen counter, her knuckles pale under the flickering fluorescent light, and closed her eyes for just a second too long. The digital clock on the microwave blinked 11:47 p.m., its uneven glow casting shadows across a space that felt smaller with every passing minute. And somewhere behind her, in the makeshift crib near the window, her 6-month-old daughter stirred again, the fragile rhythm of sleep already breaking apart. Clara exhaled slowly, steadying herself, then reached for her phone on the chipped countertop, the screen lighting up her tired face as her banking app refreshed with a number she had already memorized, $7.12. Not enough for formula, not enough for groceries, not enough for anything that mattered tonight. The baby monitor crackled, followed by another cry, sharper this time, and Clara's chest tightened as if something invisible had reached inside and squeezed. "I know, baby," she whispered, her voice softer than the hum of the lights above her. "I know." She turned back to the phone, her thumb hovering over the Messages app, hesitating the way it always did when pride and desperation collided. She scrolled past old conversations until she found the name she was looking for, her younger brother, the one person who had never judged her, even when life had unraveled faster than either of them expected. For a moment, she just stared at the empty message field, her reflection faintly visible on the glass, eyes shadowed, hair pulled into a loose knot that had long since given up holding itself together. She started typing, then stopped, deleted it, started again. "Can you send me $50? I'll pay you back Friday." The words looked heavier than they should have, like they carried more than just a number, like they carried everything she hadn't said out loud in months. Her thumb hovered over the send button again, trembling slightly, and for a split second, she considered putting the phone down, pretending she could stretch the last of the formula one more night, pretending she didn't need help. Another cry cut through the room, louder now, urgent, and whatever hesitation remained inside her dissolved. She pressed send. The message left her screen with a soft whoosh, disappearing into the invisible network of signals and towers that connected people who were never supposed to meet. Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding and leaned back against the counter, staring at the ceiling as if answers might be written there between the cracks in the paint. Somewhere miles away, in a glass-walled office high above a sleeping city, Alexander Hale's phone lit up on the polished surface of a conference table, vibrating once, then again, a quiet interruption in a life that rarely allowed for interruptions. He didn't notice it at first. The room around him was silent except for the faint echo of his own footsteps as he paced, reviewing numbers that moved faster than most people could comprehend, decisions that shaped companies, futures, entire industries. At 38, he had built a world where everything followed logic, where problems had solutions, and where emotions were something you managed, not something that managed you. But the phone kept glowing, persistent in a way that didn't belong to boardrooms or balance sheets, and eventually, almost absent-mindedly, he reached for it. The message preview appeared on the screen, simple, unpolished, out of place in every way that mattered. "Can you send me $50? I'll pay you back Friday." He frowned slightly, his thumb pausing above the glass as he read it again, slower this time, as if something about the wording demanded more attention than it deserved. Wrong number, obviously. That should have been the end of it. In his world, mistakes like this were corrected and forgotten in seconds. But his hand didn't move. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond the windows, reflections shimmering across the glass, and for reasons he couldn't immediately explain, he didn't swipe the notification away. Instead, he opened the message. Back in the apartment, Clara pushed herself off the counter and walked toward the crib, her bare feet silent against the worn linoleum, each step measured, careful, as if moving too quickly might somehow make things worse. She leaned over, gently lifting her daughter into her arms, feeling the small weight settle against her chest, warm and fragile and completely dependent on her being okay, even when she wasn't. The baby's cries softened slightly as Clara swayed, her movements instinctive, practiced, the rhythm of a life she had never planned but refused to abandon. "It's okay," she whispered again, more to herself than to the child in her arms. "We're okay." But the words felt thinner than usual tonight, like they were losing their strength. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Once, then again. Clara froze. Her heart skipped, a sudden rush of hope and fear colliding in a way that made it hard to breathe. Maybe her brother saw the message. Maybe he responded. Maybe, she glanced down at the screen, her breath catching as an unfamiliar number filled the notification. And for a moment, just a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath with her, as if something unseen had quietly shifted into place. Clara did not answer right away, her thumb resting lightly against the edge of her phone as if even the smallest movement might tip something fragile out of balance. And in the quiet of the apartment, the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than before, filling the space between her thoughts while her daughter's breathing slowly steadied against her chest. She read the message again, then once more, letting the words settle in a way she could not quite explain, because it was not just what he said, it was how it felt, simple and unforced, like it came from somewhere real. She had learned to recognize false kindness, the kind that carried expectation beneath the surface, the kind that eventually asked for something in return, but this did not feel like that, and that was exactly what made it harder to trust. Her fingers finally moved, typing slowly this time, each word deliberate. She uses infamil gentlis. It is the only one that does not upset her stomach. She stared at the sentence before sending it, her breath catching slightly, as if she had just crossed a line she could not see but somehow understood. Then she pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened, and Clara felt that familiar flicker of doubt begin to rise again, telling her she had made a mistake, that she had said too much, trusted too quickly. She shifted her daughter gently, lowering her back into the crib with careful precision, adjusting the thin blanket around her small body, and for a second, she just stood there, watching, as if memorizing the rise and fall of her chest. When she stepped back into the kitchen, her phone lit up again. A new message. "What is your Venmo?" Clara blinked, the question direct, practical, leaving little room for interpretation, and her heart began to beat faster, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of what it implied. This was real, not a vague offer, not a passing conversation. Real help. Her mind immediately pushed back, raising every warning it had learned through experience, reminding her of every time things had come with hidden costs, every time help had turned into something else. She picked up the phone, her grip tightening slightly. "I do not feel right about this," she typed, her hesitation clear even in the words. The reply came almost instantly. "That is fair." She exhaled softly, not realizing she had been holding her breath again. But before she could set the phone down, another message followed. "Then let me make it simple. No expectations. No follow-up. Just one less thing for you to worry about tonight." Clara closed her eyes briefly, her shoulders dropping as exhaustion pressed in from every direction. Heavier now because she could feel how close relief was, how close she was to letting go of the constant calculation, the constant stretching of not enough into something that could last one more day. Her gaze drifted to the nearly empty can of formula on the counter, then to the small stack of unpaid bills beside it, each envelope a quiet reminder of everything waiting just beyond her reach. When she looked back at the phone, her defenses felt thinner, worn down. Not by persuasion, but by reality. Slowly, she opened her Venmo app, her fingers moving almost automatically as she copied her username, then paused one last time before pasting it into the message field. "This is my account," she wrote, adding nothing else, as if saying more might somehow change what this moment was. She sent it and immediately set the phone down on the counter, as if creating distance might give her some sense of control. Seconds passed. Then the phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Clara hesitated before picking it up again, her pulse loud in her ears as she unlocked the screen. The notification was not a message. It was from her banking app. She frowned slightly, confused, and tapped it open, expecting something small, something manageable, something that fit within the boundaries of what she had allowed herself to imagine. The number appeared on the screen, clear and undeniable, and for a moment, her mind refused to process it. $50,000. Clara's breath caught sharply, her body going completely still as if even the act of breathing might disrupt what she was seeing. She blinked once, twice, thinking it might change, thinking she had misread it, but the number remained, solid and impossible. Her hand trembled slightly as she refreshed the screen, watching as nothing changed, as the balance remained exactly the same. Not 50, not 500, 50,000. The room seemed to tilt, just slightly, as if reality itself had shifted under her feet, and she reached for the counter to steady herself, her fingers pressing against the cold surface. This was not help. This was something else entirely. Her phone buzzed again in her hand, pulling her back just enough to look down at the screen. A message from Alex. Consider it an advance on peace of mind. Clara stared at the words, her heart racing now for a completely different reason, something closer to disbelief than fear, something she did not have a name for yet. Tears welled in her eyes without warning, blurring the screen as she tried to make sense of what had just happened, of how a single message sent to the wrong number had somehow turned into this moment, this impossible, overwhelming shift. She swallowed hard, her voice barely more than a whisper as she spoke into the empty room. This is too much. But the words felt small compared to what she was holding in her hand, compared to the quiet, undeniable truth settling in around her. Somewhere, a stranger had decided she mattered enough to change everything in a single moment, and she had no idea why. Clara did not move for several seconds after reading the message, her eyes fixed on the single word that should not have been there, her fingers tightening around the phone as if it might slip away and take the moment with it, and the quiet of the apartment seemed to press in closer, heavier, as though even the air understood something had changed. Her heartbeat quickened, uneven now, no longer guided by exhaustion or relief, but by something sharper, something that carried questions she could not ignore. She looked from the screen to the crib again, to the small, peaceful face of her daughter, and then back to the message, as if comparing two realities that were never supposed to overlap. How do you know her name? She typed, the words appearing faster than she could second-guess them, her need for an answer stronger than her instinct to withdraw. She sent the message and held the phone tightly, waiting, every second stretching longer than the last. Across the city, Alexander stood still by the window, the glow of his phone reflecting faintly in his eyes as he read her question. And for the first time since the conversation had begun, he did not respond immediately. His jaw tightened slightly, a subtle shift that would have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but in the quiet solitude of his office, it carried weight. He had known this moment would come. He had known the line he had just crossed could not be undone with silence or simplicity. His gaze drifted briefly to the darkened skyline, the reflection of his own figure faint in the glass, before returning to the screen. Back in the apartment, Clara paced slowly across the small living space, her bare feet moving without direction, her mind racing ahead of her body as it tried to connect something that did not make sense. Had she said it out loud earlier without realizing? Had she mentioned it in a message and forgotten? She replayed every word in her mind, every line they had exchanged, searching for something she might have missed, but nothing surfaced. The phone remained silent for what felt like too long, and doubt began to twist into something colder, something that made her grip the device even tighter. Then it buzzed. She stopped moving instantly, her breath catching as she looked down. A new message. I did not mean to say that yet. Clara's stomach dropped, the response doing nothing to calm her, only deepening the sense that she was standing on the edge of something she did not understand. What does that mean? She replied quickly, her fingers no longer steady, her thoughts pushing forward faster than she could contain them. This time, the reply came slower, deliberate. It means this was not supposed to happen like this. Clara stared at the screen, the words echoing in her mind, each one adding weight instead of clarity, and she felt the fragile sense of control she had been holding on to begin to slip. You sent me $50,000, and now you are telling me this was not supposed to happen? She typed, her question sharper now, not out of anger, but out of the overwhelming need to make sense of something that had shifted too far beyond her understanding. On the other end, Alexander exhaled slowly, his hand running briefly through his hair as he considered how much to say, how much to hold back, because the truth was no longer something that could be contained in a single sentence. He had spent years building a life defined by precision, by control, by knowing exactly when and how things unfolded, but tonight had broken that pattern in a way he had not anticipated. His phone remained in his hand as he typed carefully, choosing each word with intention. You are right. This was not random. Clara's breath caught again, her eyes narrowing slightly as she read the message, the confirmation sending a ripple through her thoughts that made everything feel suddenly unsteady. Not random. The phrase settled heavily, because it erased the one explanation she had been holding onto, the one thing that had made this situation feel accidental instead of intentional. She leaned back against the wall, her free hand pressing lightly against her forehead as she tried to steady herself, tried to think clearly despite the rush of questions building inside her. Then what is it? She asked, the words quieter now, more careful, as if she understood that whatever answer came next would change everything again. There was a pause, longer this time, stretching out into silence that felt almost deliberate, as if the space itself was part of the answer. When the message finally appeared, it did not explain everything, but it shifted something deeper. It is something I should have told you a long time ago. Clara's heart began to race again, faster now, her thoughts scrambling to fill in the gaps that the words left behind. But nothing she imagined felt solid, nothing felt certain, and that uncertainty was more unsettling than anything else. She glanced at Lily once more, the small, steady rise of her chest the only constant in the room. And for a moment, she realized that whatever this was, whatever had connected her life to a stranger who knew her child's name, it was no longer something she could walk away from. Her phone remained in her hand, the screen glowing softly in the dim light, as if waiting for her to take the next step into something she had never intended to find. And for the first time since the night began, Clara understood that this was not just about help, or money, or a mistake. It was about a truth that had been waiting, quietly and patiently, for the exact moment she could no longer ignore it. Clara read the message over and over, the words settling deeper each time as if they carried weight far beyond what was written, and for a moment she did not move, did not breathe fully, because something inside her recognized the shift even before her mind could explain it. Her fingers tightened around the phone, her thumb hovering over the screen as hesitation returned, stronger now, more complex, no longer just about trust or caution, but about the unknown path opening in front of her. A long time ago, she finally typed the question, quiet but loaded, her pulse echoing in her ears as she sent it. The room felt smaller again, the walls closer, as if everything was leaning in to hear the answer with her. Across the city, Alexander lowered himself slowly into the chair behind his desk, the leather creaking softly under his weight, his phone still in his hand as he stared at her message. He had imagined this conversation differently, imagined control, timing, preparation, but reality had taken a different shape, unpredictable and immediate. He glanced briefly at a framed photograph on the corner of his desk, its glass catching the reflection of the city lights, before looking back down at the screen. His fingers moved, then stopped, then moved again, each word chosen carefully. Back in the apartment, Clara's pacing had slowed, her steps quieter now, more measured, as if she was trying to ground herself in something physical while everything else felt uncertain. Her gaze drifted to the kitchen table, to the unopened mail, to the life she had built piece by piece, fragile but hers, and for a moment she wondered how much of it had been shaped by something she had never known existed. The phone buzzed in her hand, pulling her back instantly. She looked down. Before tonight, I was not supposed to find you this way. Clara frowned, her brows knitting together as the words unfolded in her mind, each one raising more questions than it answered. Find me, she typed quickly, her breath catching slightly as she read it again. Find me. Not meet. Not help. Find. The distinction was small but undeniable, and it sent a ripple of unease through her thoughts. There was a pause, shorter this time, as if he had expected that question. Yes. The single word appeared on her screen, simple, but it carried a certainty that made her chest tighten again. Clara pressed her back lightly against the wall, her free hand curling slightly at her side as she tried to steady herself. You are talking like you already knew me, she wrote, the words more direct now, her need for clarity pushing past hesitation. The reply came, slower, deliberate, as if each letter had to cross a line before it could appear. I knew about you. Clara's breath hitched, her eyes widening slightly as she read it, the phrasing landing differently than anything else he had said so far. Not knew you. Knew about you. It left space for distance, for separation, for something that existed without her awareness. She glanced toward Lily again, her mind racing, trying to connect pieces that did not fit together yet. From where? She asked, her fingers moving faster now, the questions coming more easily as the fear of the unknown began to outweigh her instinct to stay silent. On the other end, Alexander leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the desk, his gaze fixed on the screen as if it might reveal the right answer for him. He had spent years keeping this part of his life contained, organized, distant, but now the lines had blurred in a way that could not be undone. He exhaled slowly before typing. From someone who should have told you everything. Clara felt a chill move through her, subtle but undeniable, as the words settled in, because now there was another presence in the conversation, someone unnamed, someone connected to both of them in a way she could not yet see. Her grip on the phone tightened again, her thoughts moving faster, sharper, trying to trace back through her past, through the people she had known, the ones who had stayed and the ones who had disappeared. Who? She asked, the question immediate, almost instinctive, her heart beginning to race again as she waited. The silence that followed stretched longer this time, heavier, as if the answer carried more weight than the others. Clara could feel it, the shift in the air, the sense that whatever came next would not be something she could easily process, not something that would fit neatly into the life she understood. She walked slowly toward the crib again, her steps quiet, and rested her hand lightly on the edge, grounding herself in the steady presence of her daughter. When the phone finally buzzed, she looked down immediately, her breath held without realizing it. The message was short, but it landed with a weight that seemed to press into the room itself. Your mother. Clara's entire body went still, the world around her, narrowing in an instant as the word echoed in her mind, louder than anything else. And for a moment she could not move, could not think, because the one person she had lost, the one chapter she believed was closed, had just been pulled back into the center of something she did not understand. Her eyes lifted slowly from the screen to the quiet room around her, as if searching for something that could anchor her again, but nothing had changed except everything. And in that stillness, she realized that the truth she had been circling was no longer distant. It was here, and it was closer than she was ready to face. Clara did not realize she had stopped breathing until her chest tightened and forced a shallow inhale, the single word still glowing on her screen as if it carried a gravity that pulled everything else toward it. And for a moment, the past she had carefully folded away began to unfold without her permission. Her mother. The name did not come with warmth first. It came with distance, with unanswered questions, with years of silence that had never quite found closure, and Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she held the phone, her thoughts scattering in too many directions at once. My mother passed away, she typed slowly, each word deliberate, as if stating it clearly might anchor the truth back in place, might push away whatever this man was suggesting. She sent it and waited, her gaze drifting instinctively toward the small box tucked on the top shelf near the kitchen, the one she rarely opened, the one that held the few things she had left. The phone buzzed again, pulling her back before her thoughts could settle. I know. The message read, simple, certain, and it sent a quiet chill through her that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Clara swallowed, her throat dry now, her grip tightening again as she tried to steady the rising unease. Then how do you know anything about her? She asked, the question sharper this time, her need for clarity pushing through the emotional weight building inside her. Across the city, Alexander remained seated, his posture still, but his expression no longer composed in the same effortless way it had been earlier, because the line between distance and involvement had disappeared, and there was no version of this conversation that allowed him to remain untouched. He looked again at the photograph on his desk, the edges worn slightly from time, before lowering his gaze back to the phone. His fingers hovered for a moment before he began to type. Back in the apartment, Clara moved slowly toward the shelf, her steps hesitant, as if she was approaching something fragile, something that might break if handled too quickly. And when she reached up to take the small box down, her hands were not entirely steady. She set it on the table and rested her palm lightly on top of it, not opening it yet, not ready, as if the past inside could wait just a little longer. The phone buzzed again. She looked down. Because she came to see me. Clara's breath caught sharply, the words landing with a force that made her chest tighten again, because they did not feel like speculation or assumption. They felt like memory. That does not make sense, she replied almost immediately, her fingers moving faster now, her thoughts racing to reject what she was reading. I would have known. Her voice was not there to speak the words, but the certainty behind them felt just as strong, because despite everything, despite the distance and the silence, she believed she would have known something like that. She had to believe it. The response came slower, but it did not hesitate. She did not want you to. Clara stared at the screen, the statement quiet but firm, and something inside her shifted again, something deeper this time, because it suggested intention, choice, something deliberate that she had never considered before. Her hand moved almost automatically, lifting the lid of the box with careful precision, the soft creak of the hinge breaking the silence around her. Inside were the few remnants of a life she had only partially understood, photographs faded at the edges, a folded letter she had never fully read, and a small piece of jewelry she remembered her mother wearing but had never asked about. Her fingers brushed lightly over the contents, her breathing uneven now, as if each object held a piece of something she had not yet seen. Why would she do that? Clara typed, her eyes still on the box even as she sent the message, her mind struggling to connect the version of her mother she remembered with the possibility of secrets she had never uncovered. On the other end, Alexander exhaled slowly, his gaze steady as he read her question, because this was the part he had avoided, the part that required more than facts, more than simple explanations. It required honesty. Because she was trying to protect you, he wrote. Clara closed her eyes briefly, the words settling into a space that felt both familiar and foreign, because protection had always been part of her understanding of her mother, but not like this, not in a way that left so much unanswered. She looked down at the contents of the box again, her fingers finally lifting one of the photographs, the image slightly worn but still clear enough to show a younger version of her mother standing beside a man whose face she had never been able to fully place. The lighting in the picture caught something in his expression, something that now, in this moment, felt less like coincidence and more like a missing piece. Her heart began to beat faster again as she stared at the image, then slowly, almost cautiously, she lowered her gaze back to the phone. "What does that have to do with you?" she asked, the question quiet but steady, because whatever this connection was, it was no longer distant. It was here, unfolding in real time, and she could feel that the next answer would bring her closer to a truth she had never been prepared to face. Clara's question lingered in the air long after she had sent it, her eyes fixed on the photograph in her hand, the faint crease across its surface catching the dim light, as if it had been folded and unfolded too many times. And for a moment, she felt as though she was holding something more than paper, something that had been waiting for her to look at it differently. The man beside her mother in the picture no longer felt like a stranger, not completely, not anymore, and the longer she stared, the more a quiet, unsettling familiarity began to surface, not in his features exactly, but in the way her mother stood next to him, the way her expression softened in a way Clara had rarely seen growing up. Her phone buzzed, breaking the stillness, and she lowered the photograph slowly, her breath shallow as she looked down at the screen. Everything, the message read. Clara's fingers tightened slightly, the single word landing heavier than anything else he had said, because it did not explain, it did not soften, it simply expanded the space of what this could mean. "You cannot just say that," she replied quickly, her pulse rising again, her thoughts pushing forward faster now, driven by something she could no longer hold back. "I need you to explain." The phone remained still for a few seconds, and Clara felt each one stretch, her gaze drifting back to the photograph as if it might offer something before the message did, but it remained silent, its answers locked in a past she had never been allowed to fully see. When the phone finally buzzed again, she looked down immediately. "I was there the day that photo was taken." Clara's breath caught sharply, her eyes widening as she lifted the image again, studying it with a new intensity, as if the scene itself might shift under the weight of what she now knew. "That is not possible," she typed, but even as the words formed, doubt threaded through them. Because something inside her recognized the certainty in his tone, the absence of hesitation that made it harder to dismiss. You were a child. The next message came, and Clara felt her chest tighten, the implication unfolding before she could stop it. A child. In the picture, she could not remember the moment, not clearly, but she knew the age, she knew the time frame. And if he was there, if he had seen that moment, then this was not coincidence, not assumption. It was something that had existed alongside her life without her knowing. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed the photograph back on the table, her gaze lingering on it for a second longer before she looked back at the phone. Then who are you? She asked, the question quieter now, not because it mattered less, but because it mattered more than she was ready to admit. On the other end, Alexander closed his eyes briefly, the weight of the moment settling fully now, because there was no version of this where he could remain distant, no way to step back once the truth had moved this close to the surface. He opened them again and looked down at the screen, his reflection faint in the glass, a reminder of the distance between the life he had built and the one he was about to step into. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately, as if each word needed to be placed exactly where it belonged. Back in the apartment, Clara remained still, her body quiet but her mind anything but. Her thoughts moving through memories she had not revisited in years, fragments of conversations, moments that had felt incomplete at the time but now seemed to carry a different weight, a different meaning she had never understood. The phone buzzed again, and she looked down immediately, her breath catching as the message appeared. I am someone your mother trusted with a truth she was not ready to give you. Clara stared at the words, her heart racing again. Faster now, because they confirmed what she had been circling without naming, that this was not just about him. It was about something her mother had chosen to keep hidden, something she had carried alone. Her hand moved slowly, almost automatically, toward the folded letter inside the box, her fingers brushing against it as if drawn by instinct rather than thought. She had never read it fully, had never found the right moment, the right courage, but now the weight of it felt different, no longer just a memory, but a possible answer. What truth? She typed, her voice silent but steady in the words, because whatever came next, she knew she would not be able to look away. The response took longer this time, the silence stretching out in a way that felt intentional, as if the pause itself was part of the truth, part of the space she needed before hearing it. When the message finally appeared, it did not answer everything, but it moved closer than anything before it. The kind that changes how you see your entire life. Clara's grip tightened on the phone, her breath uneven again, and for a moment, she did not move, did not open the letter, did not look away, because she could feel it now, the edge of something that had been hidden in plain sight, something that had always been there but just out of reach. And as she stood there, between the past in her hands and the present glowing on her screen, she realized that whatever truth her mother had kept, it was no longer buried. It was rising, piece by piece, and she was already too far inside it to turn back. Clara's fingers rested on the edge of the folded letter, her touch light at first as if even the smallest pressure might release something she could not contain, and for a moment she simply stood there, her breath slow and uneven, the quiet of the apartment stretching around her like a fragile boundary between what she knew and what she was about to uncover. The phone remained in her other hand, the last message still glowing faintly on the screen, and though it did not move, she could feel its presence, steady and patient, as if it understood that this next step belonged to her alone. She exhaled slowly and lifted the letter, the paper softer than she expected, worn at the edges from time, but still intact, still holding whatever truth her mother had chosen not to speak. Her thumb slid carefully under the fold, and for a brief second she hesitated, her eyes closing as if she needed to prepare herself for something she could not yet name. Then she opened it. The sound was quiet, barely more than a whisper, but it felt louder in the stillness, like the first crack in something that had been sealed for years. Her eyes moved across the page slowly, the handwriting familiar, unmistakably her mother's, each letter carrying a softness she had not realized she missed until now. Clara, if you are reading this, it means I did not have the chance to tell you everything myself. The first line read, and her breath caught instantly, the words settling into her chest with a weight that made it harder to look away. She read on. her grip tightening slightly as the sentences unfolded, each one pulling her deeper into a truth she had never imagined. There is someone who knows the rest of my story, someone I trusted when I knew I might not be here to explain it to you. His name is Alexander. Clara's heart skipped, the connection snapping into place so suddenly it left her almost dizzy, and her gaze flickered instinctively to the phone in her hand, to the quiet conversation that had already begun to reshape everything. She looked back at the letter, her breathing uneven now as she continued. He was there during the part of my life I kept hidden from you, not because I did not trust you, but because I wanted you to grow up without the weight of choices that were never yours to carry. Clara swallowed hard, the words blurring slightly as tears gathered in her eyes. But she did not stop reading, could not stop, because each line felt like a piece of something she had been missing without knowing it. One day, when the time is right, he will find you, or you will find him. And when that happens, I hope you will listen, because the truth is not meant to hurt you. It is meant to give you back a part of yourself that has always been there. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she lowered the letter just enough to take a breath, her chest rising and falling unevenly as the meaning of the words settled around her, filling the space with something that felt both overwhelming and undeniable. Her eyes lifted slowly to the phone again, her mind no longer searching for explanations, because the answer had already been placed in front of her long before tonight, waiting quietly in a place she had never fully opened. The phone buzzed softly in her hand, and she looked down, her vision still slightly blurred but steady enough to read the message that had just arrived. I think you found the letter. Clara's breath caught again, her grip tightening as she stared at the screen, the distance between past and present collapsing into a single moment that felt both fragile and inevitable. Yes, she typed, her fingers steadier now, not because she understood everything, but because she finally understood enough to move forward. She glanced toward Lily, still sleeping peacefully in the crib, untouched by the shift that had just taken place, and something inside Clara settled, not fully, but enough to feel like the beginning of something new rather than the end of what she had known. Then you already know why I could not ignore your message tonight, Alexander replied, his words appearing with a calm certainty that no longer felt distant, but connected, anchored in something that had existed long before this conversation began. Clara looked back at the letter in her hand, at the familiar handwriting that had carried her through so many years, and for the first time, she did not feel like she was losing something by uncovering the truth. She felt like she was being given something back. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone as she typed her next message, the hesitation gone, replaced by a quiet resolve she had not expected to find. Then tell me everything. The room remained still, the night unchanged outside the window, but inside, something had shifted in a way that could not be undone, and as Clara stood there between the past she had just opened and the future waiting on the other side of a message, she realized that sometimes the smallest mistake did not lead to chaos. It led to the exact moment you were meant to find all along.